Let's start with you, Professor Zhang. There is so much significance to President Xi Jinping's visit to Astana this time. This is in spite of Xi Jinping and the Kazakh president meeting with each other often over the years. If my math is correct, this is the 16th time they met. Why is that?
You know that actually Kazakhstan and China has a very important strategic partner relationship. Meanwhile, in recent 2 decades, actually, China and Kazakhstan are relying each other, on economic perspective. China imported so lot of resources, oil and gas from Kazakhstan. Also, Kazakhstan imported so lot of China's goods. Especially, I like to say that today, Kazakhstan provided their Belt Road Initiative. From Chinese side, we have the Belt and Road Initiative. 2 initiatives will be connected to each other. Another important thing is that in recent years, actually, in 2013, President Xi first time provided, the Silk Road economic belt concept in Kazakhstan. And Kazakhstan definitely is a very important Central Asia country. Its area is the biggest one. Meanwhile, its competitiveness also is the highest one in Central Asia. More importantly, Kazakhstan is located on the, from China to European countries. Kazakhstan is located in the economic corridor of, Central Asia and West Asia. So I think that's why in recent years between China and Kazakhstan, those leaders in 2 countries met so lot of time.
Right, Professor Zhang, you touched upon many important issues regarding our topic. But now let's take a little bit more focus on Kazakhstan. And Professor Kalyuchnova, Kazakhstan is the first overseas pit stop along the economic belt of the new Eurasian Continental Bridge rolled out in the Belt and Roads Initiative, as Professor Zhang just mentioned there. I took a look and I have some figures there. More than 1,200 Europe-bound China Railway Express trains transit through Kazakhstan, and rail freight is also rising amazingly. It handled by Chinese railways reached 8.2 million tons, and the number of freight containers more than doubled. Additionally, 8% of the value of trade between China and Europe, which is expected to reach 800 billion in the year 2020. Can the Kazakh infrastructure deal with this influx of infrastructure and logistics?
Right. I think what we need to mention, first of all, is the Belt Road Initiative and the relations between Kazakhstan and China in this project. From my point of view, it's obviously these 2 countries, they complement each other in this great project. But this great project is about infrastructure. And unlike any other Belt Road Initiative nations, Kazakhstan is strategically positioned to be Chinese portal to Europe. And if we look at the geography, it's from the border at Khargos to Kazakhstan Western Caspian shore in the energy epicenter of Aktau. And Aktau was originally the mining center, uranium mining center during the Soviet time, and now it's a core of Kazakhstan oil industry. A series of pipelines, railways and freights will not only link Aktau, Kazakhstan to Khargos, but it also will provide the links to Russia in the north, to Iran in the south, and to Azerbaijan and Turkey in Europe, across the Caspian to the west. Another very important point we need to remember that Kazakhstan was an early adopter of Belt Road Initiative since the country had legacy of supporting similar integration process. If we look at the history, since 1991, then President Nazarbayev was elected as the first president of the country, he was the main person who was proclaimed the formation of common of independent states, a successor of the Soviet Union in 1991. And Nazarbayev later, in 1994, called for the integration and revitalizing Central Asia through the Eurasian integration. So Kazakhstan has a lot in terms of the international cooperation to offer for this project. And obviously, the driving force of this Belt Road Initiative would be China, together with the Kazakhstani participation.
Right, Professor Zhang, earlier you described the economic ties between China and Kazakhstan as relying on each other. But now I got a figure for you. Chinese investment to Kazakhstan so far has amounted to over $42.8 billion US. It's a very large number. So we have to talk about the structure problem. Do you think this kind of investment or the two-way trade there is actually balanced?
Yeah, actually now China imported a lot of resources and energy products from Kazakhstan, and mainly exported those manufactured products from China to Kazakhstan. So generally speaking, the trade is quite balanced. But we think that between two sides, there are still very big, trade potential to explore. For example, in this year, you can find that between two trade volume actually booming, increased 45%. I think that behind that, that's relying on China's investment booming in Kazakhstan. Actually, in my mind, in the first decades of this century, China's investment in Kazakhstan mainly concentrated in pipeline construction and energy and resources sectors. But in recent years, especially after the Belt and Road Initiative provided, and China's investments in Kazakhstan mainly concentrated, industrial capacity cooperation, including those iron and steel plants, cements, and other those, heavy industrial sectors. I think that from Kazakhstan, they want to, restructure Kazakhstan's economy, and then they hope to promote, industrialization and infrastructure improvement. On this regard, from Chinese side, provided so strong supply capacity, and then two sides economic relations becomes closer and closer.
Well, Professor Kalyuchnova, we mentioned this amazing number, $42.8 billion US Chinese investment to Kazakhstan. So naturally, there are some concerns of a Chinese use of Kazakhstan's land and ports, and it has gained some momentum nowadays. What's your take on this kind of concern?
I don't think that we should have any concerns, because the main policy of Kazakhstan to move from resource richness dependency to the greater diversification. The problem is that if we don't have any international connections and links, we are very unlikely to become a competitive nation in this case. So, for example, you mentioned all these figures, but what is quite important to understand that they are spread evenly in different projects. They are not only in oil and gas. They are not only in a particular sector of the economy, but for example, if we talk about infrastructure, it's increasing the capacities of international border, for example, crossing the Styk, Alashankou or Alahol, Khargos links, and create a railway connections to the Altai and Tanchenk counties. That all will provide a better international logistics zones, which Kazakhstan at the moment is missing. If we take agriculture sector, for example, Kazakhstan and China intend to modernize infrastructure on Bakhit-Pakio border checkpoint, which will again will give an opportunity to better international trade in terms of agriculture. An interesting project in agriculture is the project when the government are working to increase the quotas of Kazakhstan Kazakhstan grain supply to China, and strengthening investment cooperation with the Chinese Committee to promote international trade and representatives of Chinese companies.
Right, Professor Kalyuchnova, we had to move on to the next agenda on this discussion. That is the upcoming 2017 Astana World Expo. Professor Zhang, what do you see this importance attached by both countries to renewable energy and new energy?
Between two economies, just before I mentioned that actually Kazakhstan is one of the most innovative economy in Central Asia. If you look at those ranking places organized provided by Switzerland, actually Kazakhstan could be ranking within 50 economies in the world. That means Kazakhstan has a lot of very qualified human resources with higher education. From Chinese side, we also hope to promote renewable innovation economy. So renewable energy and cleaner energy, that would be very important fields.
So that's the future.
Yeah, that's
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Professor Zhang Jianping from the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation, MOFCOM, and Professor Yelena Kalyuchnova from University of Reading. China and Kazakhstan are two countries working closely in various fields, including industrial cooperation, which will boost Kazakhstan's industrialization. Astana is facing a tipping point in its economic transformation. Dovetailed with China's Belt and Road Connectivity proposal, Kazakhstan's Bright Road Initiative should make the most of Eurasian integration and drive its economic performance forward. Meanwhile, cooperation between the two sides, especially growing people-to-people exchanges, will diversify Kazakhstan's domestic economy and its global trade. The strategic partnership between the two sides will also set a good example for China's partnership with other Belt and Road countries. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has realized this and has shown Tokyo's interest in a Belt and Road initiative. The initiative itself, above all, is about building a community of shared interests and a shared future for the benefit of all.